Morning, everybody. Welcome to this Sylvan Symphony session. Today, we're going to talk about Sylvan Symphony, which is an aged raw black. So before or by the end of this session, you're going to have a further understanding about raw blacks. We will review some of what we talked about last week when we were talking about reverence, when we were talking about the cultural terroir aspects. We'll have a history today. We're going to move from cultural terroir into history, and we're going to talk about raw black versus fully ripened black. So you're going to know much more about all of these things by the end of today's session. So how should we start this morning's session? Let's start by first praising you. And the reason I need to praise you is because all of you have made this tea journey and come from a variety of places. Some of you have come from Mordor. Oh, wait a minute. That's the wrong script. Let me pull the other script. Some of you have come from coffee drinking experience. Some of you have come from tea experiences that involve tea bags. Some of you have come from tea establishments that are more about the people than the tea itself. And all of you have come together to learn about the tea itself. And it's been great because the information you share back with me in terms of quality, in terms of understanding, my goodness, actually, we don't need the understudy anymore. If it was just the tea master up here and one of you were in the shop and a new person came in, whoever of you is in the shop could explain even better than I could to a first timer. So this is why I'm praising you, because you've really gotten a deep understanding of tea, and it's wonderful to see, and I congratulate you for that. All right, let's go ahead and move to raw black, Sylvan Symphony. Let's first start with a differentiation between raw black and ripened black. Don't you love these terms? It's as if we're in the kitchen somewhere. Yeah, I'm gonna have the raw beef today. No, we're going to have the blackened beef today. Here's the difference. Raw black simply means it hasn't started the fermentation process, or if it has, it's fermenting naturally. If it's going to become fully fermented and you're fermenting naturally, and fermentation is an organic process, isn't it? Because it's bacteria, yeast, molds, and fungi all at work making changes on the tea leaves. So if you do that naturally, traditionally, it takes 30 to 80 years to fully ferment. So it's like a generational tea in a way. Now, in the 50s, in the 60s, and in the early 70s, lots of experimentation was going on because people were saying, hey, we're already post-World War II. We're modern. Isn't there a way to do this faster? If you look at the inflows of history in that time period, so I'm talking about the 50s, 60s, and early 70s, you see at least 3 trends clearly, which contributed to going from this natural fermentation process to a fully fermented process. And one of those trends is called an accident. In tea history, accidents have played formative roles in many new styles of teas. And it may have been somewhat of the same with the fully fermented. So the accident being a delivery accident, And the delivery accident being from the tea fields in Yunnan. And I said that term loosely, didn't I? And you all know I said that term loosely. Not necessarily the tea fields, but where tea is harvested, whether it's in the fields or in the forests. And then taking that journey to, say, Tibet. Let's roll ourselves back to 1950. If you were in Yunnan and you said to your friend, yeah, I'm going to go to Tibet. Okay. Tibet borders Yunnan, so that should be an easy thing to do. Except it's not an easy thing to do. We have to do some more history before I completely explain how hard this was. Let's go back to poets in the Tang Dynasty and in the Sung Dynasty. Tang Dynasty, not as much as the Sung Dynasty. So Sung Dynasty, somewhere around about 1060 to somewhere around 1368. So poets during that dynasty wrote about the Ilau Mountains. And the Ilau Mountains, by the way, is where we're going today. Ilau Mountains are in central Yunnan. They run northwest to southeast. It isn't one mountain, it's a mountain range, and it's about 250 miles long. Okay, simple definition. There are 9 peaks that are over 9,000 feet high in that 250-mile long region. Most of the tea grows, most of the ancient tree tea grows from 3,300 feet above sea level to about 5,400 feet above sea level. So somewhere in that range is the sweet space for ancient tree. All right, so we're getting this picture more and more filled in. We haven't left the Sung Dynasty because those mountains didn't grow or decline. So I was able to fill that in, and it's still true today. So what did poets say about traveling in this area? They used one of my favorite words in poetry, and you see it in Tang poetry, especially among scholars who are punished or officials who are punished and they're sent to the south and they have to endure miasma. Miasma is really hard to translate because every area's miasma is different. So let's use an easy translation. Poisonous airs is an easy translation. Miasma sounds so much better. But the poisonous airs are created because of different conditions. And in the Ilau Mountains, they run in a humid area as well as dry area. And in the humid areas, it's incredibly humid. And for people from the north where it was dry, it seemed almost poisonous. And in this one famous poem, it says, when you have the misfortune to be walking or sent or trapped in this area, kites fall out of the sky. Now, what types of kites are they talking about? The birds. So if those birds are flying, they fall out of the sky. They say that the air is so bad that pythons run through that area to get out of that area. That's what this poem says. So obviously this is exaggeration, but it's to highlight something. It's to highlight how humid some parts of this area are, how bug infested some parts of this area are. What lives in the Ilau Mountains? Are there any animals that live there? Well, how about black-crested gibbons? Gibbons are apes of sorts. And if you've never seen a gibbon in the forest, it's an amazing sight because their ability to get from one place in the forest to another place in the forest is unmatched by anything except birds. That's how fast they move through the forest. What else lives there? Well, how about some cloud leopards? They live there. You have bears up there. At the lower stretches, you have elephants. These are and pre-elimination from the area, they used to actually have Asian rhinoceroses. So you've had over time a whole set of animals that normally, when I say to you, yeah, I'm going to go see rhinoceroses and leopards and so forth, you're thinking, oh, you're going to Africa. Oh, no, we're going to Asia. What part of Asia? China, Yunnan. This is where these animals exist and have existed. So this was a dangerous journey from that perspective. How else was it dangerous? Did they have nice graded roads with yellow lines down the middle so that people, could, when they're walking one direction, be on one side and walking the other direction, be on the other side? The answer is no. They had some indistinct paths that sometimes just disappeared into the forest, even though they had, in quotes, the Southern Silk Road. And they've had this, in quotes, Southern Silk Road since the 300s, 400s, or 500s. And really, it was to move tea from that area, and in some cases, to move grain from that area northwards, for the most part, although they had a branch which went south as well. So they've had roads, but hard to keep these roads in any condition you and I would recognize as roads. So imagining taking a horse train of tea and you're going through these indistinct routes, hazardous routes. If this was all you had to think about, yeah, I can do that. It might take me a little while, but I can do that. Oh, but wait a minute. What about the weather and the altitude? Because as you went towards Tibet, you're getting into the 12,000, 13,000 feet above sea level. So for some people, high altitude sickness. What about the roads there? Straight up the mountain, very difficult. And the rest stops, the villages, very far apart. So this was a difficult journey. And so in some cases, these caravans, because of weather conditions, because horses weren't feeling well, they had to stop. And when they were carrying this tea, it is possible that it got wet, and getting wet, it may have started this sense of, this might be a way to change the nature of tea. So that's what I mean by accident. And what they would have been changing, by the way, is the nature of raw black. So that's the accident portion. What about the on purpose portion? Well, here's an odd place to start. Turns out during the French War with the Vietnamese in the 50s, apparently tea from the border regions on its way to Canton province, some of it was stopped just because of war activity. And again, got wet. It gets to Canton province, and they're thinking, hey, this is kind of interesting. Moldy, but it's kind of interesting. So that's another possible way that this sense that maybe we can do something to speed it up came into being. Then there was intentional experimentation. So in Mung Ra, different places, but most especially Mongkok, they started experimenting. Can we make this raw black into fully ripened, fully fermented black in under 70 years? What might we be able to do? And they looked at other processes of fermentation and eventually concluded, yes, maybe if we do something that we would recognize here as semi-composting. I know I've already been critiqued about using the word compost, and I'll stop using it after this one instance. But really what I'm trying to show you by the use of the word is, like composting, you take leaves, you inoculate them with a starter that's got the yeast, molds, and funguses from a previous batch. You allow it to come to a certain temperature, you time it, you turn over the leaves because you piled them, you cool them down, and then allow it to come again. Repeat, repeat, repeat. Turns out if you do that for 45 to 60 days, you can simulate fully ripened generational raw. Why did I use the word simulate? Because it's not exactly the same, but it's close. It's close enough. It's close to the degree that tea drinkers appreciate it. So in 1973, the Chinese government, through Monghai, patented this method, and fully fermented pu'er tea was born. Well, was born. This format of doing it was born. Remember, I said we've gotten to fully fermented before, but this quick format. All right, so that gives you a little history. Let's talk quickly. Let's see how I'm doing. Oh, I'm still doing okay. Let's talk quickly about what is raw black, because last week we didn't. We talked about the management methods. We talked about the traditional management methods, globally important heritage methodology by traditional peoples. And what was that methodology? Basically, to have space between trees, to have plants between trees, to weed. And what I mean by weed is common weed. You're not clearing all the plants, you're just clearing the pesky plants between the trees. To take out the dead branches, and that was their form of pesticide, because when you allow a branch to die or a limb to die, bugs start to congregate and eat and feast and move that process along. And that brings other bugs, and that brings problems to the forest. So the farmers removed that. These were traditional methods. And what did they encourage again? I may not have said this last time. I should have, though. They encouraged epiphytic plants, that is, parasitic plants in a way, to grow on the trees, because most of them formed medicines, traditional medicines that they could use within the village. So this became one gigantic synergy. Get those pesky weeds out, keep everything clean, and let the epiphytics grow. Simple as that. This is this heritage, globally important heritage system that the Chinese in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, as they were studying, realized, oh my gosh, these ancient peoples were really smart. They did this stuff, and the forest is sustainable. Not only is it sustainable, but the profit from the forest, that is the tea portion of the forest, far exceeds profit from monoclonal fields. So all of these things led to preservation. And Idaho Mountains, because it's a World Heritage Site, is no different. They have their preservation methodologies, which are similar. They're not exactly the same, but they're very, very similar. You would recognize. So I've talked and talked, but I haven't told you what raw black is. You pick the leaves from the trees, or if you're doing it monoclonally from the bushes, you bring them into wherever you're going to process them, whether you're going to aggregate them and sell them to a processor, or if you're going to process them yourself, you're going to lay them out, mostly single layer, and let them dry out. And we use a fancy word for that. Let them wither. Why do you let them wither? Because they're pliable once they lose 40, 50, 60% of the water content. And usually they wither for a period of at least 2 or 3 days, sometimes a little bit longer. And if it's raining or foggy, they move it inside. So this is a really fascinating thing or aspect of the processing, because this means when you process, you got to have space. Because it isn't just, oh, I can lie this or put this down anywhere outside. Oh, the answer is yes, yes. And there's lots of room outside. Oh, yes. But what about, again, when it rains? Oh, that's right. I got to have inside room too. So all of these are considerations as farmers do this type of business. They wither, they bring inside, and then fry. For all the same reasons you would fry green tea. You want to stop oxidation. When it's withering, because you don't care that much about oxidation, a little oxidation will occur. And I do mean a little, not much. Whereas with green tea, you're getting that in there same day you pick. This, you're getting it in there a few days afterwards. So there is some little bit of oxidation, but boy, you bring that to a stop. Do you fry this as hot and as long as green tea? The answer is no. You fry it semi-hot, not as hot. So green tea is usually 300 to 400 degrees, 250 to 400 degrees. This is usually 150 to 200 degrees. So it's not as hot. And we'll get to a reason why in a minute. And it's not as long. So it sounds to me, if I were a scientist just thinking about what I just said, I would say they're not serious about oxidation. And instead of saying they're not serious about oxidation, I would say that's a good starting point, but there must be something else on their minds that's not directly flavor related that they're doing this for. And the exact reason is because they don't want to kill dead the microbes on the leaves. Remember, this is coming from a forest which is full of microbes, bacteria, fungi, yeast. And they're going to use that because this is going to become fermented tea. And if you fry for a certain amount of time at 300 or 400 degrees, you're going to kill everything. But if you fry at a lower temperature, what happens is these organisms go into a homeostasis. They kind of put a shell, and that shell is, it's like, oh, time for us to go to sleep because it's getting hot here. After the frying, you get those leaves deaggregated as fast as possible so you can cool everything down. And then you roll, you shake, you break down the innards. Now, usually when we break down the innards, we're looking for the inner part to become exposed to oxygen. Is that what we're doing here? Remember, we've already denatured the enzymatic reaction the enzyme that causes oxidation, that's already denatured. Oh, but what do we still have on these leaves? Microorganisms that are asleep. And now the insides are opened up. And so what's the last step? You take it outside and sun dry. Why do you sun dry? You sun dry it because that, the light and that gentle warmth wakes up the microorganisms. They recognize, hey, safe to come out of homeostasis, safe for us to go to work. Oh, wow. And the leaf insides are all open and we're hungry. We've been we've been in hibernation. It's hard. We don't get to eat. Now we get to eat. This eating is what causes the changes. And it's a race, by the way. Nobody will describe this to you quite this way. It's a race. But actually, you can visualize it's a race between these organisms, which are far ahead in the beginning. Oh, yeah, I'm going to get my fill and eat and make the changes to the leaves. But what else is eventually going to happen to these leaves? Whether you leave them loose, because after some period of time, getting them sun-dried, and you want them dried to a certain level, and if you can't get them sun-dried to that level, you bake them a little bit to get to that level. And I'm talking a level of moisture, 4 or 5%, so they don't mold. What happens after you get them to that level? You're going to store them, and you're either going to bring them to market, or you're going to store and bring them to market later, or you're going to store and then put them in cakes later. Those are your choices. And you have one further choice. And this is the choice that most people take, most farmers take. They won't store them. They'll sell them to people who are going to speed ferment, that 45 to 60-day process. But we're talking about raw black here, so we're not speed fermenting. We're still going to do long-term fermenting. So somewhere as that's fermenting, somewhere in that cycle, oxidation starts. And you have this race, tortoise and the hare. Hare is way the heck ahead, and that's a fermentation process. But by X number of years, the oxidation starts to set in. And so you get both effects, especially as you get out in years. When you're getting out there 7, 8, 9 years, you start to get both things happening. Fermentation slows down, oxidation speeds up. So let's talk about Sylvan Symphony today, now that you're thoroughly thirsty. Don't start it yet. We're going to get there. 2 more minutes. How old is Sylvan Symphony? It is as a cake. This comes in cake form. 7 years old. 2017 was the year it was caked. What year was it picked? 2015. So really, you have a 9-year-old tea here. Why is this important? Because the flavor profile of this is going to be different than last week's reference. And part of that is where it is in the process. How does it compare to a typically monoclonal pick? A typically monoclonal pick will generally, in the same area, by the way, because the terroir has to be the same for this to be true, typically will be more astringent at the beginning. This, because it is ancient tree, is less astringent. And that's part of the age of the actual tree itself. Okay, I've talked enough. You all are thoroughly thirsty. Tea Master has been waiting patiently forever, waiting for me to finish up. And so what she's going to do is go ahead and demonstrate this for you and then brew together. So with great pleasure, I bring forth the Tea Master.
Yes.
Biju.
Hey, good morning, everyone. This is the form of the cake, okay? So I can prepare this leaf right now.
So you see, it comes in cake form. This cake, somebody we should cheat the other day. It has 357 grams in it. You notice in the instructions, you can get 4 steepings for every 6 grams. So realistically, what you have here is about 240 to 260 cups of tea in a cake. So when you do a cake, you do it from the side. When you start to take it apart, you take it apart from the side. You don't do this motion. That's not a good motion. You carefully work the sides. And if the cake has been done properly, it comes apart easily. I will put. So all of you have 6 grams already pre-packaged, so you don't have to measure that. The brewing instructions are 3, 2, 1, 1. 3 minutes for the first, 2 minutes for the second, 1 for the third, 1 for the fourth. Yeah. The master is getting it ready. And remember, you're going to use 175-degree water with this. You tend to use slightly warmer when it's caked.
And by warmer, you mean the
Hotter
warmer,
temperature.
hotter, yeah, but hotter than the 170 that you normally would apply to ancient tree leaves at
That's
Sophie.
exactly what I mean. Yes, hotter than the, very good, yes.
那结果拿个 cream
Okay.
拌不一样。
The tea master is drying 200-degree water because she's first going to use that to rinse the glasses. She has 4 glasses out here because she's going to make 2 cups at the same time. And by the way, when you do multiple glasses, you have an ability to do the tea faster, but you don't have to. 2, you can use 2 only, and that works just fine. No, it's kind of a rhythm here, not in a hurry. She's going to draw the 175-degree water. She'll aerate it a bit. There's just that rhythm about being present. That's really important because that's how you make the best tea. And being present in general is in some way related to how you lead the best life. Aerating the water. Not in a hurry. Conscious of what she's doing. Ancient tree tends to stand up better. In some cases, especially with the raw black, when it's just slightly warmer. So that's why you don't have to worry about this as much as say with a red. Shakes the cups to wake up the leaves. And she puts the water back in the kettle so she can control the pour. Because she would like to hit the sides of the cup. She's not looking to pour directly on the leaves. Kind of almost to pour under the leaves.
No, 3 minutes.
Oh, 3 minutes, yes. I knew that. Okay, so these you have, I would say, almost a 50-50 on the top and on the bottom. So one of the things I didn't mention, but I meant to mention, was during this journey in the 50s and 60s, on the way to getting the fully fermented tea methodology, you also had experimentation with shapes. So cakes have existed for a long time. That shape is well established. Tea that used to go to Tibet up until about 1960 was in the shape of a heart. And most of that tea was a summer pick. So that means the quality of that tea wasn't that good. But there's a reason for that. Because Tibet, how do they drink tea? They drink tea with a bunch of other things in it. So they weren't looking as much to high flavor, fine flavor. They also experimented and then quickly discontinued the experiment by planting varietals from other parts of China that were small bush. But they found that the leaves were small and that the flavor wasn't that good. So they discontinued that experiment. But the heart shape morphed into a brick. So you see bricks of tea, some about this thick, some a little bit thicker. You see mostly 357 grams of cake teas, although some are bigger. You see tea that looks like it's a little ball or a hat. So you get those in single serving sizes. You get those in larger serving sizes. So all of these things are the result of experimentation. And everything except the heart is on the market these days. The heart may be on the market and I just haven't seen it. But I think that that shape may be a little bit harder. Well, and again, they were using a different quality of tea. The tea that's the best quality, either in terms of ancient tree or in terms of more buds, always is spring tea. And so the tea that we get here for this, Sylvan Symphony, this is spring tea. First one, the timer is going off. Tea master is separating the tea leaves from the tea itself. Not in a hurry, just very steady. That was a 3-minute steep, by the way. Excellent. So we have this, a very nice pale color. More importantly, there's other things we have. We have a big aroma out of this. Wow. I haven't even smelt the leaves yet. We have a big aroma. So we're going to go ahead and enter the quality arena. And as we enter that quality arena, remember, we're going to look for astringency right off the bat. We're going to look for mouthfeel. We further are going to look for aftertaste. And then we're going to look for what are the energetics. And by energetics, I mean, how does it feel when you drink it? Oh, by the way, since this is 175, we can take a bigger sip because it's not going to burn your mouth. You still use caution, though, as you take this sip. You roll it around your mouth. You explore the feeling of it. Oh, my goodness. And you think about this aftertaste, which is, wow, not quite what I'm used to. It's really good. Then you gradually think about energetics. Energetics for some teas come right away, and for some people right away, and then for others it takes longer. If you're in touch with yourself, you tend to experience it faster. That is, if you're thinking about it. That's all I mean by being in touch with yourself. Second sip, you're going to verify where in the mouth it seems to have the greatest reaction. You're also going to start to think about aroma, which hit me right away, even before I took the first sip. You're going to think about flavor as well. So let me go ahead and do that. And it's your turn to brew. This is, you have a treat upcoming.
This for myself. I forgot. I think I prepared it.
So get your packages labeled package number 2, Sylvan Symphony out. It's pre-measured to 6 grams. Set your timers for 3 minutes. Do whatever you need to do to get the cups guaranteed clean, no soap spots or anything. You can do that with any temperature water between 175 and 200 degrees. And then go ahead and draw your 175-degree water. You are going to aerate it, but you're not gonna be nervous about it because this has great forgiveness if you're a little too hot. And it certainly doesn't hurt you if you're a little cooler. And make sure your timer is set for 3 minutes. Remember, just nice and smooth as you put this together. So funny, I had somebody in here from Portland yesterday who talks about a tea shop in Portland and how they emphasize quite correctly the importance of water. We don't talk about it as much, but you see us maneuvering this water all the time. Very important. Always remembering that 99% of the tea is water.
Is the Portland shops focus on water quality or water temperature or both?
Water quality is really what the Portland shop focuses on. There's very few places which focus on temperature the same way we do. And that's one of the things, that's a really good question because somebody else was in here this week, a brand new person. And we were talking about the importance of temperature and how temperature will end up determining at the very end of the day how much you like a tea. In other words, you can have great water, great tea, you brew it at the wrong temperature, it's going to be a flat experience, or it's going to be a non-event because you'll have missed some inherent part of the tea. Water quality, so in the whole scheme of things, water quality is extremely important. However, that being said, if Starbucks had, what if Starbucks went to heaven and prayed to God, give me the very best quality water? God says, yeah, here's the best quality water. At the temperature that they brew tea, would it have mattered that they had the best quality water? And the answer is no. You would not, especially with these teas, you would not have gotten the result that you might have expected for the best water. So remember, being present is about every detail. Best water, best temperature, appropriate grammage, best times. These things together and making sure that the cup is absolutely pristine. All of these steps aggregate to a fantastic result. Will you get a fantastic result if one of those steps is less than perfect? Well, you'll get a very good result, most likely. However, it won't be a fantastic result because you aggregate to fantastic results. And all of us as teachers, especially at your levels, we drink tea for a lot of reasons, but at the end of the day, it's gotta taste supreme. It's gotta taste like nowhere else that you can get tea. That's why you get these teas, yes.
First participant comment. The scent of this tea liquor, oopsie, shifted. The scent of the tea liquor has elements of ocean, cider, and steamed lotus leaf. The astringency is upfront, but the tea is very light on the tongue. The lightness makes me think I can run on the tops of the trees while wielding the green destiny sword.
Oh, I love this one. This participant is wielding the green destiny sword. I love that image. Talking about the cider, ocean,
Lotus leaf.
lotus leaf, all of this as part of this opening round of understanding, and an astringency that the participant identified. And that astringency, by the way, links to wielding that destiny, the green destiny sword, because it gives one the sense. This comment is really good because it talks about this tea deals with you. I didn't say that in a very nice way. Let me say it in another way. This tea actually dialogues with you. That's what I really meant to say, because so many things are happening in this tea, as evidenced by that comment. There's a lot to catch on to with this particular tea. And this is a raw black.
Another comment, large juicy aroma, almost like juicy fruit gum.
Juicy aroma, large, like juicy fruit gum. And this comment is especially important because you don't usually think of raw blacks being this juicy. That was the first impression I had as I entered the quality arena, particularly the second sip. It was like, oh my gosh, the drinkability of this is incredible. Meaning also, the understanding of it is right away flashing, and therefore consuming it relatively quickly can happen because you're getting the whole picture really, really fast. And it's a really comfortable picture. So raw blacks, generally speaking, especially when they're this aged, this shows you something about the original source material. If it were monoclonal, typically the original source material by this age, while drinkable, will be relatively flat. This is not flat, this is bright. And that's one of the things about Sylvan Symphony that stands out. It's a 9-year-old and it's so bright. And it's really hard to imagine this is already aged 9 years old, because usually you get a roundness and you don't usually associate bright, starry-eyed with a 9-year-old. This is bright and starry-eyed, which means the original source material was quite good. Yes.
Can you tell us a little more about the things that grow alongside these trees?
Yeah. So the question is, what else grows among these trees? So remembering this is in a forest, so there's lots of other varietals of trees. So there's sour cherries in this particular forest. There are magnolia trees in this particular forest. In this particular stand, there's some epiphytic, and I forget what I think they call them crab claws. And they grow from the higher branches, and these are harvested and they go for some ridiculous amount of money, because you in the countryside and in Yunnan, where they know the value of this, it's used as a medicine. In addition to that, There are lichens all over the place, mosses all over the place, ferns everywhere, and different types of ferns. So it's a really interesting area. The Idaho Mountains in general, and thank you for this question, because the Idaho Mountains in general are hugely biodiverse. One of the most biodiverse places on the planet. And so there's still new plants, still new bugs, all being discovered, because it's just hard to catalog all this stuff. Yeah.
Another comment on this tea, I am detecting sweetness as I drink further into the cup.
Sweetness as this individual drinks further into the cup. And again, when you think of raw blacks, many times you don't think of sweetness. Now, last week during reverence, sweet and slightly fruity did come. There is not so much of a fruitiness with this one. This is more about the sweetness itself, which is really nice and very distinctly differentiates itself from last week. Last week was great. This is also great in a different way. Yes.
Another participant notes sweet aftertaste on the tip of the tongue.
Sweet aftertaste on the tip of the tongue. Yeah. So we're getting sweet over and over again, which you can't avoid with this one, which is really odd because normally, again, with these aged raw blacks, sweetness is usually not the first thing that's coming to people's minds. But this one, again, because it's ancient tree and because of their processing techniques, and their processing techniques are different than the industrial techniques down in Mumbai. Yes.
The energetics feel calm and warming of the heart area.
Energetics, calm and warming of the heart area. And again, usually with raw blacks, energetics tend not to be as warming as this one is. This is definitely warming. It's warming to the extent that if you closed your eyes and somebody had made it for you, you might have been tempted, if you had just been thinking of the energetics, to say, you just served me a red. Even though taste-wise, it's not a red, but you're getting sweetness and a warmth all at the same time, which is typically the hallmarks of a red.
Another comment, slight tobacco-like. I guess I'm assuming, Peter, you mean like flavor or maybe scent, but you can clarify more at the first sips, he says.
I like this comment. So another flavor or aroma is being introduced here, tobacco-like. And it's slight, very subtle. And just like with the comment right off the get-go with umami, yes, you have umami. Yes, you have other things that can be tobacco-like. All they're kind of playing in the background. These are not foreground flavors and aromas. They're background flavors and aromas. And again, this is why all of you are so good, because you know the taste from beginning to end. You go through the whole spectrum. Great catch.
This tea seems to evaporate from my cup faster than Reverence did.
This tea evaporates from the cup. This is a scientific principle. It evaporates faster from the cup than Reverence did. You know, I didn't look at any of the research in China, but I love this comment because I'm going to write back to the scientists and tell them to work on the different evaporation rates. Maybe there's something we can use that for.
Nice. Another participant shares, I'm getting drying at the top of the tongue and then an umami forward throughout.
Drying at the top of the tongue and an umami, which?
And then umami, Jenny said forward, and umami forward, maybe in the front of the tongue, maybe, and then throughout the tongue. Is that what you mean?
Ah, okay. So an
Taste, and umami in the
taste.
taste.
Okay. in the front and throughout the tongue. And so I like this comment because again, Jen, you are tasting down into the tea. And again, this group is fantastic because as making judgments when we're in the field, this is exactly what we're doing. We're not tricked by upfront sweetness or upfront this or upfront that. We want the whole panorama. So when we do the tasting in situ at the site, we actually are looking for all of these things. And I'm really happy to hear all of these comments because that means you're doing what we're doing.
Another comment on energetics, very calming energetics for me. Were these ancient trees, she asked?
Yeah, very calming energetics. These are calming and again, incredibly warming for me. And it is typical of ancient tree. Somehow, you know, I want to draw an analogy. It's probably the wrong analogy. So you can put this in the category of an understudy false analogy. But you know, you think of ancient and grounded and calming. Yeah, I get that picture in my head. There's definitely with ancient tree, without question, a calmingness to almost every single ancient tree I've ever drawn. And so to transform that into grounding, that makes sense to me. Absolutely makes sense to me. All right. Oh my goodness. It also makes sense to me that I overtalked, but you all are used to that. So I salute you all today because you reinforced my opening comments. We don't need an understudy. You guys are so good. And loved your commentary and loved your appreciation. You right away differentiate, even though you didn't use the word, oh, this is very different than reverence. You didn't use those words. Instead, you gave me flavor profiles and approaches that were so different than reverence. And I hope you take really good notes on this because next week we have yet another raw black, new star, and its profile will be different both from the reverence and from this. This is really a tea. If you like raw blacks, or even if you don't like raw blacks, but like this is a good one to invest in because over time, from our perspective, this will just keep getting better and better and better. And by the way, on the market in China, they also have this belief. You can't, we're unaware of anywhere that you can get this particular year of Sylvan Symphony on the market. So I think that we're one of the last of the places where we actually have stock of this. All right, your responsibilities this week. Oh, very important responsibilities. Stay healthy. You know, newspapers reporting, oh, we've got new strains of this and new strains of that. That's not for us. You leave the new strains for others. Let's stick with the old stuff. Lots of tea and good health. Yes.
Will we be getting our new teas in the mail this week?
Oh, this is a good question. So the questioner asked, have you waited to the last minute to put together the new tea packages, or are you on top of things? And are you getting things together so that we might receive those new tea packages this week? This is a great question. And so I have to play it halfway because even as we talk right now, we have supervisors in here who are putting together packages. So we believe that we will start to have the ability by probably Thursday to start to send out the new packages. So it's incumbent upon you, and I'll send an email to remind everybody to let me know whether you want it sent or whether you want to pick it up. Very great to spend this hour with you. I always love spending Saturday mornings with you. You really do make my Saturdays a great day. You have a great week. We'll see you next week with New Star. Bye-bye now.
Take care, everybody.